KubeCon 2026 in Amsterdam on day 3, and still a lot of excitement in the air, and we're going to just keep that momentum going. Today with me I've got John Nicholson.
You know, it's good to be here, Jed, but I've been having some problems this morning with the Wi-Fi, and it got me thinking, like, there's, all this different connectivity issues that I'm having. Why don't we make it more complex? Why don't we bring Kubernetes into it?
Yeah,
we should work on a Kubernetes an etcd over Wi-Fi, like testing. Like we should maybe get Bluetooth for like pod connectivity. Like get some extra redundancy.
You know who we should talk to have this conversation?
I don't know.
Duffie from Isovalent.
etcd over Wi-Fi. I don't know.
With us we have Duffie from Isovalent. Duffie, welcome.
Good to see you all. I'm Duffie Cooley from Isovalent, the field CTO for the Americas for Isovalent. So
thank you for entertaining my farce RFC idea here.
That would be. I mean, I've heard of TCP over Pigeon.
Yeah. That's the OG joke. So.
I hadn't really considered etcd over Wi-Fi. That's a great one.
So Duffie, jumping right in, being a VMware alumni, and using this opportunity to catch up to a lot of alumni, it's been pretty great. But more importantly, jumping into why we're all here. VKS, or vSphere Kubernetes Service, VCF, from a VMware perspective, Isovalent has a pretty deep strategy here around the Kubernetes community as well. But then these two things converging, coming together from a partnership perspective. Can we just dive into that? Let me know, what that looks like. How?
For sure. Yeah, it's been really great. It's been a really great communication with the VKS team. We were initially reached out to because the VKS team was actually working on adding a capability of add-ons to VKS, which is very exciting. It's one of the it's one of the ways that we are able to actually engage with a lot of the other cloud providers and those sorts of things in those environments. And so it was really great to hear that they're working on that. And they actually used Cilium, our open source project, as the first proof of concept for that. And it's working really good. And I think they just announced it yesterday that that's actually now available for VKS. It's super exciting. And so if that's something that you're interested in exploring or playing with, I would love to hear more about what you're going to do with it and that kind of thing. And now we're working on getting the Isovalent Enterprise product also packaged up and shipped as part of that solution. But they're two different products. One is the open source, ships with, is owned by the foundation and anybody can deploy it. And then the next one is the enterprise one where we add a little bit more functionality and we bring a lot more capability to the enterprise product.
Yes.
So give me the quick, 30-second pitch for Cilium. What does it bring for, as a failed network ops engineer person? Speak to me like I'm 15, not 5.
You learned something, right? Anyway, Cilium is, in a nutshell, it is networking, security, and observability for Kubernetes, right? And so what Cilium by itself will do is, it'll handle the pod-to-pod, east-west traffic. We can help your clusters become more scalable by enabling you to get rid of kube-proxy and actually leverage eBPF for all of that east-west load balancing, so basically pod to service and that sort of thing. And then as we get further down the stack, there's a lot more really interesting capability like load balancing. We can actually use BGP or ARP depending on how you're trying to announce those VIPs out to the outside world and attract traffic to your workloads.
So you can announce the path without having to sit in the path necessarily and steer the packet.
It will sit, the packets will basically be so the way our BGP implementation works, all of the nodes can be BGP routers, so they can, depending on the configuration, peer with your top-of-rack router or some other router in your infrastructure, and then announce out the VIPs that we're actually using as load balanced IPs, and then we can attract that traffic. And the neat thing about using BGP for that is that it's actually a lot more scalable a solution than some of the other solutions that are out there, because we can use ECMP to attract that traffic to multiple nodes.
Oh, and ECMP allows multiple parallel flows, equal cost multipath, I think.
Yeah, so at that point you're no longer stuck with the idea that I have to get this traffic to the ingress controller, and then from the ingress controller to the workload. You can say, I can just bring it into the cluster at any point, hit any of the ingress controllers.
Any to any paths
exactly.
can be
Makes it much better.
So Duffie, there's obviously there's a lot of opportunity, but also some, if we get real for a second, some competition inside of the stack. And I wouldn't say competition from a sales perspective, but where the technology components play. I don't know how involved you were with NSX.
I was one of the inventors.
Right. So between the evolution of NSX into VCF networking and its role in the VPC strategy with NSX,
Yeah.
I mean, there's still we've obviously still pursued these types of partnerships and relationships. So when we have a customer who says, okay, well, I'm all in on this VCF networking thing, it's part of the platform, but Cilium and others, where's the boundary? Where's the line? Like, how are these complementary of each other, and where do they potentially overlap?
Yeah, I think in the way that Isovalent looks at it, we're not competing for this market. We're actually enabling the ability to introduce some of those VPC-like characteristics into Kubernetes specifically, but not. So we're not trying to take over the vSphere market. We don't enable you to. We don't help you move or migrate virtual machines from one to another or anything else like that. What we're really focused on is just the networking component, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have VMs that are sitting in an OpenShift cluster that you want to make part of a segment that might exist in your, in vSphere or in one of their products, then we enable you to do that by attaching to a bridge appliance, which will announce those devices that you've deployed in this other hypervisor to the existing environment, right?
Right.
And we're also introducing this idea of Isovalent private networks, which would give you the ability within Kubernetes directly to actually treat like that VPC-like experience, but like in a first-class way on Kubernetes, right? But really tailored to Kubernetes, and nothing to do with like vSphere or anything like that.
Excellent. Right.
So that's fine. So, we've gotten into those capabilities. We've gotten into kind of how it plays within the VCF ecosystem and the VKS ecosystem. What you also have, obviously an enterprise product. What are the extra value adds? What are, obviously support and things like that.
So
but
this
what else
functionality, so this functionality that we just mentioned, the Isovalent networking for virtualization, that is an enterprise functionality that we're building into it. It's not going to go into the open source code base. We also have, so Cilium by default everything's built on top of eBPF. So when we're actually implementing things like network policy, when we're doing things like that, we're implementing that in eBPF, which happens natively in the kernel. And you could think of eBPF in a nutshell or in a sentence. eBPF is, we have the ability to now effectively, if we treat the Linux kernel as an event-driven API, I want to open a file, I want to open a socket, eBPF first lets me instrument that. So when the call comes into the kernel, I can see what happened. I can see what process made it. I can see whether that was successful or not, that sort of thing. And then the second thing it allows me to do is manipulate. So I might say, if the file is opening on the root file system from inside of a containerized process, I do not want to allow that.
So add security
within
that process.
And so every time these eBPF programs are hit, we emit an event that describes what happened, whether it's connectivity between applications or traffic coming in from the outside world, or even files opening or closing, those sorts of things. And these events can now, in the enterprise product, be held in a long-term storage solution that we call Hubble Timescape. And Hubble Timescape enables us to do a lot of really interesting things in the enterprise product. Like, for example, we have another tool that's called ISO Policy, where if you have a bunch of workloads that are happening in a namespace and your goal is to handle things like microsegmentation, some of the really hard things for people to do is wrap their head around, well, how do I create this network policy from scratch, right? if there's no examples, that's going to be really hard.
So having the observability, you have visibility of those actions, and you can...
Exactly, and then we can use all of that event data as a body of evidence to say, here's what your network policy could look like, right?
Similar to on microseg and NSX, what we'd use net flows and look at the existing flows, but you're looking at the actual file access calls.
That, yeah. And we can, and it'll also do things like lint the network policy that you have created to make sure that it's actually doing the thing you expect. And then we also, and it'll also do a thing where you can actually test out changes. Like if I implemented this network policy based on the traffic that I saw in this namespace for the last week.
Do a what if walkthrough.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so that way, Jad doesn't break my network. I can model his changes.
Or at least he's doing it
that's a bad
really
idea.
intentionally. No.
Yeah. So what's the path in, right? So CNI obviously plays a big role here. Whether it's VKS or any Kubernetes, how do we create? How do we create not the integration, but what's day zero look like is basically what I'm trying to say.
So if you bring up a VKS cluster as part of the initial configuration of VKS, you now have that add-on functionality, and then from the add-on functionality, there are going to be published add-ons that you can then add at that point of the stack. And it's all configurable. Because VKS is actually leveraging cluster API under the covers, we can even disable kube-proxy at install time and just let Cilium take that over. Like there's all of that functionality is all in there for day one, and that'll continue to support upgrades. So both on the open source and on the enterprise add-on for VKS, you'd be able to continue to lifecycle and manage that in a way that is automated, right? So you're not
that is cool.
having to
There's
go
kind of
there
the
manually.
plugin system for VKS, and there's the manifests and checks versions, and obviously that stuff gets signed, so you've got a clean version coming in.
Yep. Yeah. So I think it'll be really good for people to use it. I'm excited to see the add-on happening.
I was looking at some of the UI up there. I was like, this feels like an app store for a Kubernetes distribution.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.
It's been. I mean, it is a really neat thing. I think that for I've seen a few examples of that, and it's great to see it happen. Like it makes it a lot easier, a lot more approachable for people. I think when you have first-class support for add-ons like this, it really shows that you're not just that you're willing to like open the doors.
A blog
to,
post or a reference architecture are cheap.
Yeah.
Like actually building real integrations
Yeah.
and building an ecosystem is hard.
Yeah,
like
it is.
And that
really is,
add-on capability will be available through the add-on management and
exactly.
and VCFA multi-cluster management. Yeah, so I mean that is pretty exciting. That's actually a big part of the community play for
exactly. Yeah,
for
that's
VMware.
what I love about it. Yeah.
Well, I think I have at least one more question. Migrating Kubernetes. This comes up a lot, and one of the challenges with migrating from one platform to another is the networking components, right? Mm-hmm. How do I move these workloads over? Whether if I'm going to re-provision them or redeploy them, or if I want to do a little more of a seamless migration. You briefly touched on this, right? How do I get Cilium to speak on both ends, create that bridge, and then be able to extend not just the capability, but also eventually lead to migration, plus all the other things. I mean, what does that look like? Do you see migration being a big part of your policy, your strategy? Like, can you just walk us through that?
It's a tough one. I find often that a lot of platform teams will evaluate the difficulties around migrating workloads, and then the difficulties around just doing a greenfield cluster and then working those and moving those workloads from one cluster to another, right. and often find they fall toward that second category because mm-hmm. it's going to fall more in line with like the operational principles of like what they're trying to build. But for those migration cases, like say you were going to move from another CNI to Cilium, or you wanted to be able to flatten the pod network that's between two Kubernetes clusters that are both running Cilium, like we can actually support both of those capabilities with Cilium itself. And we have some great labs for that on isovalent.com.
Excellent. All right. Duffie, thanks for joining us. And as always, for more information, the VCF YouTube channel, and we'll put the show notes for any links and other exciting announcements from this week. And thanks Duffie. Thanks, John.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
See you next time.
There.